Hey, what's up, economics students? This is another video that now we're going to practice some graphing with the law of supply. The first video that I shared with you last week had to do with the law of demand and graphing that given scenarios. So let's get into it. So we're going to review the law of supply really quick and then practice graphing it. Remember these tips, okay? When you're given a scenario, like I think I got 7 total for you in this video, kind of run through these questions in this order. You know, the first question you have to ask yourself when you read the scenario, is this in regards to supply or is it going to affect demand? And I put a little tip here on the left in red. If the scenario mentions businesses or something involving production or affecting businesses or firms, it's going to be supply. Supply is going to be the curve that's affected. If it mentions consumers or consumer taste or something that affects consumers, it's going to be demand. So right there, that will help you determine whether the scenario affects supply or demand. Next, is it just mentioning price as the sole change, like the price of a good or service increases? If that's the case, it's going to be a movement along one curve. But if it's mentioning something else, the price of an input, so now we're talking two things, price of an input, workers' productivity, consumer taste, complements, you know, comparing two goods, the price of one good and price of another, then it's going to be a factor. All right, now we're talking shift. Remember, right word, positive, left word, negative. Being able to graph it, and then read the graph. What happened to price and quantity? Okay, so let's get into it. Let me pull up my slides here. And what I'd like you to do, here's the review of your 5 factors. You can go ahead and read through these really quick. So if you see any scenarios involving these, something that mentions subsidies or technology, inputs, like I said before, number of suppliers, now we're talking a factor. But it gives, if you just get a scenario that looks like this, let me just type a quick one out. Doesn't mention anything else, just talking about the price of Nike shoes, that's going to be a movement. Okay, so keep that in mind here. Okay, so what I'd like you to do, we got 7 scenarios for you. Got some connections to the office, since I'm a big Office fan. Pause the video, get your whiteboards out, or do it in your notebook, and graph it, and see how you did on the graphing aspect of these questions. All right, so here's the first question. You run a Wendy's. Connection to the office there. The minimum wage just increased from $9 to $15 an hour. That means if you're running a Wendy's, you're now paying your workers $6 an hour more. Graph the effect on supply. So if you're paying your workers $6 an hour more, what's going to happen is now you have less money to put towards supplying burgers, Frosties, baked potatoes, chilies, all the good stuff that Wendy's makes. Because now you have to take more money and give it to your workers. We're assuming nothing else is changing here. We're assuming the workers aren't becoming more productive. Productivity is staying the same. The only thing that's changing is your input costs. A wage is part of an input. A wage is what you use to make something. It goes into production. So if your production costs are increasing, let's make this, keep this the right color. If your production costs are increasing, that means you have less money to put towards supply, and supply would decrease. And then knowing that, look at the effect now on price and quantity. The original quantity was here. Now, go ahead and take a second. Pause the video if you want. What's happened to quantity? And what's happened to price? Okay, so if you pause the video and then looked at this, you'll know that the price increased. Price went from P to P1, okay? While the quantity decreased. There's Q and Q1. Okay, remember, anytime anything left is a decrease. So Wendy's is now supplying less of its goods and services and driving up the price of its Frosties and baked potatoes and all that other stuff, okay? And this is very common. This is like one of the reasons, going back to the minimum wage argument, when if you read into the minimum wage, one of the things economists talk about is, yeah, the minimum wage might be beneficial for a lot of your entry-level workers because it's going to give them more money, but there's always a trade-off. We mentioned that the first day of class in economics. There's always a trade-off with every decision. And with minimum wage here, what we're talking is entry-level workers have more money. They're going to make more money and with higher wages. But firms who have to pay the higher wage usually increase their prices for their customers. And that's evidenced here, okay, by the leftward shift in supply. All right. Always label. Notice here, guys, I drew an arrow showing the direction of the shift. It's really important. So here, I'll put a few tips on the slide here. Use arrows if you want to write these down. Use arrows. Label new curves. S1. And also label your variables. P, P1, Q, Q1. That helps you understand what's happening to the price and quantity, because that's going to be our next skill, guys, after we get through this learning standard. Once we put supply and demand together, now you're going to have to graph certain scenarios and then tell me what the effect is on price and quantity. So we're kind of killing two birds with one stone in this video. All right, next ones will be a little quicker. Since I gave you those tips and paused the video, you run Michael Scott Paper Company. You just purchased new technology which allows you to produce paper more efficiently. Graph the effect on the supply of paper. Okay, so right here, if you go to that skill, that tip, skill number 1, new technology. Okay, once you see technology, we know that's affecting what? Supply. And I kind of give you the answer here. But let's say on a test, let's say it's just saying graph it. It's not saying supply technology. That's a giveaway. It's going to be supply. All right. So what we're looking at here is, since you have more technology, now you can churn out more paper at a quicker pace because of the increase in technology, S to S1. And now what's happened to your quantities? Okay. Q1. You look at it here, price has decreased. Oop, I got them flipped up. There's your original price. Here's your new price. Okay, price has decreased, quantity has increased. With the increase in supply, thanks to the new technology that's now available to produce paper. New printing machines, new printing press, new computer software, servers, whatever it would be. Okay, here's another touch on the office. Dunder Mifflin was just created by Robert Dunder, which increases the number of suppliers in the paper industry. Graph the effect on the supply of paper. So again, if we were to take out this part, okay, all right, number of suppliers. Okay, so we know right there what's going to be affected, supply or demand. Suppliers, we're talking firms. We're talking an increase in supply here because now we have more companies supplying paper. So the supply of paper increases, S to S1, and then look what happens to your quantity. Just for the sake of time, I'm just going to label the new equilibriums. There's Q1, and price has fallen from where it was up there. Okay? Number 4. Dunder Mifflin is struggling. Without help, they will go out of business. The U.S. government steps in and gives them a subsidy. There's the giveaway there. Subsidy is one of the factors that affects supply. Graph the effect on the supply of paper. So go ahead and pause the video and think about what would happen if the U.S. government stepped in and gave them a subsidy. So a subsidy, just a quick recap here, a quick review. Remember, a subsidy is like the government bailing out an industry, giving them a lump sum of money. a grant, a loan in some cases. So this is, if you're looking for actual real life examples of this, 2008, housing market crash, US government stepped in and bailed out automobile makers. And they also stepped in and bailed out a lot of the big banks to keep them in business so they could keep loaning money out. This year with 2020 and the COVID-19 pandemic, U.S. government has stepped in and helped out small businesses, the airlines industries, a lot of different companies that needed help who were being adversely affected by the pandemic. So subsidies intended to keep production going, to ramp up supply. So knowing that, the idea behind a subsidy is for firms to keep supplying. Okay, so supply theoretically would increase here. And so just like in the last ones, you have an increase in the quantity of, what is this, paper, and then a decrease in the price of paper. So the firms win because they're getting a subsidy, and consumers win because they're getting lower prices. Number 5, okay, so the price of a good increases. We're just talking the price of a good. Does this affect quantity demand or a shift in demand? So here we're talking just quantity demand. So really quick, what this would look like. If it was the price of a good that increases, we'd be going from this point right here, would be a movement along a demand curve. Here's your demand. From this point to this point. If you follow the red dots, now we got higher price. And less demand. Okay? Affects quantity demand. Number 6, Coke and Pepsi are substitutes. There's the giveaway there, substitutes. Price of Coke falls. What happens to the demand for Pepsi? All right, so when you see substitutes, that's the giveaway. We know that when we're talking substitutes and complements, we're talking what? Demand. Okay? So go ahead and graph it out. So if Coke and Pepsi are substitutes, and the price of Coke is falling, okay? Remember, in this case, as the consumer, you're going to buy which? You're going to buy the one that's cheaper, right? So you're going to buy more Coca-Cola and less Pepsi. So the demand for Pepsi is going to decrease because people are going to choose the cheaper option. They're going to choose the Coca-Cola because it's cheaper, okay? So to graph a leftward shift, this is the market for Pepsi. And look what happens to the quantity. Because now people are drinking less Pepsi, they're drinking more Coke. The quantity has decreased, and look what happens to the price. Now Pepsi's concerned. Not as many people are drinking their product, so they're going to lower the price to try and drive that demand back up. Price falls from P to P1, and quantity decreases. Okay? I think we got one more. New reports show that a product is harmful to people's health. What happens to the demand for this product? So if we just said graph it, like graph took the demand part out, because the demand part's the giveaway here. But if they took that part out, we're talking people's health, we're talking consumers. So right off the bat, if you just read that first sentence, you should think, we're not talking business health, we're talking consumers, people's health. What's that going to affect? Supply or demand? Demand. Okay. So if a product is harmful to people's health, well, people are rational consumers. They're not going to keep buying that product. Demand's going to decrease, D to D1, just like before. And so the price of that product is going to fall, and the quantity of that product being sold and purchased is going to decrease from where it was before. Okay? So hopefully this gives you some real life application too. So when you read about new products that come into the market that are really successful and have a lot of high quality, those products tend to rise in price. And hopefully this information will help you realize why that is. When something's more popular and readily available and highly demanded, the price is going to go up for it. But when something comes out and it's a complete failure, it flops for whatever reason, the price of that tends to fall. People don't want to buy things that are low quality, okay? So that's it for the video today. Hopefully, to recap, you guys are able to read a scenario, determine whether it's supply or demand, graph it, and then look at the effect on price and quantity, because that's going to be our next skill as we move through this unit. So hope this helped. Hope you did a nice job, and talk to you soon.